Alright, I'll be honest, some of these are somewhat innocent and often forgivable, but others are truly horrible and they should just stop doing. What is up, guys? Daniel Plotkin here, muscle scientist and, of course, muscle lover, coming at you with a video about things that I hate that trainers do. I was a trainer in many gyms for over 8 years, and you get to see some stuff. I've made some of these mistakes early on, so I'm not finger wagging. Many of them egregious, others somewhat innocent, and everything in between. Let's dive in. Number one, this one is particularly bad, and I do not like seeing it at all. Catastrophizing movements and insisting on supervision. Oh my God. You're gonna lift like that, your nucleus pulposus is gonna shoot out your rear end like that, flat back, okay? No, 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 no. Stop, stop, stop. Put the dumbbells down. You keep lifting with the elbows out like that, you're gonna get shoulder cancer. No, 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 no. Knees over toes, cartilage goes. We're gonna have to up to 5 sessions a week. I need to watch you at all times. Okay, I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit here, but the point that I'm trying to underline is that words matter, and saying it's going to cause injury scares people out of doing something that's inherently very, very safe. We want the smallest barrier to entry because we know it's extremely safe and extremely good for your health. And common rules that you hear around things that you must not do really aren't backed by evidence to show definitively that they actually do cause injury. Many of this evidence is based on cadavers and models and not on actual evidence in living human beings. I'm totally fine with telling a client that certain ways are better for execution, whether because it hits a muscle better or it's a stronger position, and a myriad of other reasons. This style of delivery doesn't put the risk of injury in a person's head when it might not have been there in the first place. Even if a position seems weak right now, or even if you feel something in terms of pain or a sensation you don't like in a certain position, over time that could very well subside just by getting more and more exposures. Bottom line is, you don't want to create a problem where there isn't one. Alright, let's get into number two, arbitrary rules.
You're a beginner, so no machines, no heavy weights, no drop sets, just foundational movements. Hinge, squat, press. That's it.
These are just some examples, but of course there are many others. No machines maybe suggests that you should probably gain some proficiency with free weights so you can control your body through space, but this is certainly not a hard rule. Honestly, I'm going to put all of my chips into the basket of finding a program that the person enjoys and is going to keep on doing, which is usually a combination of both, where they do some foundational movements where it might take a little bit more time to learn them, and other movements that they can just sit and go for it, and it's a very quick learning process. A similar line of thinking goes into no drop sets. Early on, fatiguing a movement and executing it when you've just learned it may not be the best idea. But if doing a simple movement like a bicep curl and the person really, really just wants to get a nasty pump, am I going to say, no, no drop sets for you since you're a beginner, wait 2 years until you've gained a certain level of strength? No, I'm obviously not going to do that. Get your pump on. It's really not a big deal. And then lastly, the one I mentioned, no heavy weights for beginners. This one is basically just complete nonsense, although there is a slight grain of truth. Do I want a beginner doing a bunch of 1RMs? Obviously not. That's probably true for any skill level, but oftentimes this is taken too far where beginners are only forced to do movements in the 15 plus rep range because this is considered to be safer. But I've noticed that using heavier weights, somewhere around the 5 to 8 rep range, can actually be very beneficial to beginners. So this will depend on the exercise and the individual and what they're feeling, but generally speaking, I prefer the 5 to 8 rep range a lot of the time. You're not limited by your cardiovascular system or being out of shape. You don't get bored during the set, and you sort of force the individual to find a bracing pattern in which they respect the weight and execute. Alright, number three, overcomplicating things for the sake of it. This one is not a big deal, obviously, but you see it a lot, especially when people first get into the industry. They want to show how much they know and therefore just bombard their client with tons of extra information and jargon that really doesn't need to be there. You can say something like, well, Bill, there's reactive deloads and there's proactive deloads, and they can be done in many different ways with different intensities and durations, and this is all based on the kind of loose paradigm that's called fitness fatigue paradigm, which assumes that the fatigue can actually mask performance, and therefore, as we accumulate fatigue, we can dissipate it and then express that performance as time goes on. Got that, Bill? Are you following? You can either say that, or you can just tell Bill, sometimes the body needs a break, or we're not performing at the rate we think we should, so we'll experiment with some time off or dropping down the amount of work we do. All right, number 3, overcueing. This one is super, super common. Even before the lift is executed, you've given the person 20 things to think about, when in reality, an individual can only really think about 1 or 2 things at a time. Okay, watch really closely, pay attention. There's a lot going on, okay? Watch what I do, listen, take in all the cues, then follow exactly what I do, okay? Width is gonna be far enough in that you can get the most back tightness without being uncomfortable at the shoulder. So here, too wide, not enough tightness. Here, too close, can't even get into the position, pain. On rack, small steps just to set up. Okay, now here, tripod, and make sure that you unlock at the knee and the hip at the same time and descend while keeping your weight over the midfoot. Tripod, midfoot, and then come up, reverse the position. Nice small steps inside, touch, down it goes. Okay, now you try. What I prefer to do would look something like this. So let's say it was the squat. Find an easier movement pattern. So maybe something like a kettlebell in their hand so they have some anterior load. And then have them just sit down on a box, stand back up, and say, that'll be the movement pattern. All I want you to think about is sitting back down onto the box. Then you have them go under the bar in whatever way they can, step back, sit down, see what that looks like, and then correct things slowly as they go one by one, and you'll be surprised how quickly they start putting it all together. That way you can correct things as they arise, and those things will stick into the person's head instead of throwing a bunch of things that may be unnecessary at the individual and that honestly the individual is not going to retain and execute on. And last but not least, touching the client too much. I think there might have been some old myth about touching the person more will force that muscle to be activated or something along those lines. I just think that one, touching the individual can often be uncomfortable if it's excessive, and two, if you've chosen an exercise that in order for the client to properly tax the muscle, you need to constantly touch them, then you've probably chosen a bad exercise.
You're gonna hit those RDLs, so you really want to feel it in those glutes. Feel that right there?
I think there are certain instances where touching is useful. Sometimes you do want the person to focus on a specific muscle, but one touch or a couple might be enough there. And two, sometimes you can actually guide the movement pattern. So let's say we're talking about a row, let's say a seated row for this example, you can actually push onto the elbows in the opposite direction so that way the individual can feel where you want them driving their elbow. But that's something that you only need to do a couple of times in order to actually get the desired outcome. It's not something that you need to constantly do. If you need to do it constantly, then you've done a bad job at cueing, right? Alright guys, that's it for this video, but obviously I have more gripes, so if you like this style of video, let me know in the comments and I can make some more. I also just want to point out that this is not me finger wagging, this is just me pointing out some of the things that I commonly see that are wrong, some of the things that I've done wrong, and maybe even will continue to get better at as time goes on, like thinking back to a session and saying, oh, maybe I could have worded that better, or maybe I could have not catastrophized that as much as I did, and so on. So it's all about that constant learning. Speaking of constant learning, if you want to do some more learning, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like, comment, share with friends, not enemies. Peace!